Welcome to the DiscipleSmith's podcast. We're going through the entire Bible in 1 year. Today we're looking at part 16, where we'll begin our study in the book of Exodus 1 through chapter 4. This is the DiscipleSmith's podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the DiscipleSmith's podcast. Today we're going to be starting our journey in the book of Exodus. We're going to be looking at chapters 1 through 4. And we're going to be looking at how God's chosen people has been under Egyptian oppression, and God is going to deliver them from that. And that's exactly what He wants to do in your life. It's what He did in my life. He wants to deliver you from your sin, from the brokenness of this world, and He wants to restore you into a relationship with Him. And so we're going to get into it here this morning. We're in chapter 1 of the book of Exodus, the second book in the Bible. It says, "These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. Each came with his own family. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The total number of Jacob's descendants was 70. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died. But the Israelites were fruitful, increased rapidly, multiplied, and became extremely numerous, so that the land was filled with them. A new king who had not known Joseph came to power in Egypt. He said to his people, 'Look, the Israelite people are more numerous and powerful than we are. Let us deal harshly with them. Otherwise they will multiply further. And if war breaks out, they may join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country.' So the Egyptians assigned taskmasters over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor. They built Pithom and Ramses as supply cities for Pharaoh. But the more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. They worked the Israelites ruthlessly and made their lives bitter with difficult labor in brick and mortar and in all kinds of field work. They ruthlessly imposed all this work on them. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other was Puah, 'When you help the Hebrew women give birth, observe them as they deliver. If the child is a son, kill him, but if it's a daughter, she may live.' The Hebrew midwives, however, feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, 'Why have you done this and let the boys live?' The midwives said to Pharaoh, 'The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife can get to them.' So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very numerous. Since the midwives feared God, He gave them families. Pharaoh then commanded all his people, 'You must throw every son born to the Hebrews into the Nile, but let every daughter live.'" Chapter 2. Now a man from the family of Levi married a Levite woman. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with asphalt and pitch. She placed the child in it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Then his sister stood at a distance in order to see what would happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe at the Nile while her servant girls walked along the riverbank. Seeing the basket among the reeds, she sent her slave girl to get it. When she opened it, she saw the child, a little boy. Crying, she felt sorry for him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew boys." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Should I go and call a woman from the Hebrews to nurse the boy for you?" "Go," Pharaoh's daughter told her. So the girl went and called the boy's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you your wages." So the woman took the boy and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." Years later, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people and observed their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. Looking all around and seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian dead and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your neighbor?" "Who made you leader and judge over us?" the man replied. "Are you planning to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses became afraid and thought, "What I did is certainly known. When Pharaoh heard about this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Then some shepherds arrived and drove them away. But Moses came to their rescue and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he asked, "Why have you come back so quickly today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "So where is he?" he asked his daughters. "Why then did you leave the man behind? Invite him to eat dinner." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. She gave birth to a son, whom he named Gershom, for he said, "I have been a foreigner in a foreign land." After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned because of their difficult labor, and they cried out. And their cry for help ascended to God because of the difficult labor. So God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the Israelites, and he took notice. Chapter 3. Meanwhile, Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire within a bush. As Moses looked, he saw that the bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. So Moses thought, "I must go over and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't the bush burning up?" When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called out to him from the bush, "Moses, Moses." "Here I am," he answered. "Do not come closer," he said. "Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he continued, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, "I have observed the misery of my people in Egypt, and I have heard them crying out because of their oppressors, and I know about their sufferings. I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them from that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the territory of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and Jebusites. The Israelites' cry for help has come to me, and I have also seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore go, I am sending you to Pharaoh, so that you may lead my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses asked God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He answered, "I will certainly be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you will all worship God at this mountain." Then Moses asked God, "If I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what should I tell them?" God replied to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Say this to the Israelites, 'Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation. Go and assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, I have paid close attention to you and what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised you that I will bring you up from the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Then they will listen to what you say. Then you, along with the elders of Israel, must go to the king of Egypt and say to him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now please let us go on a 3-day trip into the wilderness so that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our God. However, I know that the king of Egypt will not allow you to go, unless he is forced by a strong hand. I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles that I will perform in it. After that, he will let you go. And I will give these people such favor in the sight of the Egyptians that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Each woman will ask her neighbor and any woman staying in her house for silver and gold jewelry and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters, so you will plunder the Egyptians. Chapter 4. Then Moses answered, What if they won't believe me and will not obey me, but say, The Lord did not appear to you? The Lord asked him, What is that in your hand? A staff, he replied. Then he said, "Throw it on the ground." He threw it on the ground, and it became a snake. Moses ran from it, but the Lord told him, "Stretch out your hand and grab it by the tail." So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. "This will take place," he continued, "so they will believe that Yahweh, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." In addition, the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was diseased, white as snow. Then he said, "Put your hand back inside your cloak." He put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it had become like the rest of his skin. If they will not believe you and will not respond to the evidence of the first sign, they may believe the evidence of the second sign. And if they don't believe even these two signs or listen to what you say, take some of the water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the Nile will become blood on the ground. But Moses replied to the Lord, "Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, either in the past or recently, or since you have been speaking to your servant, because I am slow and hesitant in speech." Yahweh said to him, "Who made the human mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now go, I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say." Moses said, "Please, Lord, send someone else." Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "Isn't Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well, and also he is on his way now to meet you. He will rejoice when he sees you. You will speak with him and tell him what to say. I will help both you and him speak and will teach you both what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be your spokesman, and you will serve as God to him. And take this staff in your hand that you will perform the signs with." Then Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, "Please let me return to my relatives in Egypt and see if they are still living." Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." Now in Midian, the Lord told Moses, "Return to Egypt, for all the men who wanted to kill you are dead." So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took God's staff in his hand. The Lord instructed Moses, "When you go back to Egypt, make sure you do all the wonders before Pharaoh that I have put within your power. But I will harden his heart so that he won't let the people go. Then you will say to Pharaoh, 'This is what Yahweh says. Israel is my firstborn son. I told you, let my son go so that he may worship me, but you refused to let him go. Now I will kill your firstborn son.' On the trip, at an overnight campsite, it happened that the Lord confronted him and sought to put him to death. So Zipporah took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, and threw it at Moses' feet. Then she said, 'You are a bridegroom of blood to me.' So he let him alone. At that time she said, 'You are a bridegroom of blood,' referring to the circumcision. Now the Lord had said to Aaron, 'Go and meet Moses in the wilderness.' So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron everything that the Lord had said to him, and about all the signs he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron repeated everything the Lord had said to Moses and performed the signs before the people. The people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had paid attention to them and that he had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. May God bless the reading of his word. May it shape and transform our minds to better discern his will. So these chapters of Genesis cover the beginning parts of Exodus, and they have very practical utility in our lives today. One of the first things that we see here is that God had a plan for the nation of Israel. We saw that all the way towards the beginning of Genesis in the early chapters, around 13 or 14, where God told Abraham, "I'm going to multiply your descendants, but they're going to be slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And so we see this come true. This didn't catch God by surprise. God had planned this. God had planned it, one, so that he could prepare the peoples where they were going to arrive in, the Canaanites. They were going to prepare them to be taken out by the Hebrews. But he was also preparing the hearts of the Hebrews so that they would appreciate it whenever they were delivered from their slavery in Egypt. Now, we all know how that sort of works, but that is God's plan. And God's plans can't be foiled. Now, you'll see some strange happenings here where it almost seems like Moses is arguing with God, and it almost seems like God submits and surrenders. But let me tell you, I believe that God has divine middle knowledge. I think he can see past, present, and future perfectly, but I also think he can see hypothetical perfectly. What would happen if I didn't make this podcast instead of making it? God knows the answer to that. What would happen if, I wore different shoes today? What would happen if Moses decided to speak in front of everybody? God knows all of these things. And so I believe that whenever he questions things, or whenever it seems like he goes back, or that's not for his benefit. God's plan is here. God knows all things perfectly. He has perfect knowledge. That is for our benefit. That is to bring about a certain purpose. And so, you can think of it like that. So Moses argues with God, seemingly, about not being a very good speaker. And so God basically says to him, well, isn't your brother Aaron a good speaker? We'll let him speak on behalf of the people. And his anger burned against Moses. So, first of all, I want to talk about how God has plans for you. God has plans for the ancient Israelites. God has plans for all the people of the entire world. God had plans for Moses whenever his mom had to send him down the river in faith, knowing that anything could have happened. But instead, God showed favor on this woman by allowing none other than Pharaoh's daughter, the princess of the entire land of Egypt, to intervene, rescue Moses from this basket. And then she finds his sister, and his sister is like, hey, I will go get a nursing mom from the Hebrew women to take care of him. And so God provides in so many ways. She goes and gets Moses' mom, his own mom, to take care of him. And so on faith alone, she sends Moses down the river. Pharaoh's daughter selects her to take care of him and nurse him, and she's even going to pay him. And so God has a plan, and those plans can't be foiled. That's just how it is. Now, it may seem like God changes his plan, but like I said, that's not for his benefit, that's for our benefit. God knows all things perfectly. One of the other things to remember is that it was actually Pharaoh's daughter who gave the name Moses to Moses. And that's going to play an important role in sort of ascertaining who the Pharaoh of this Exodus actually is. But you'll see here shortly what we're talking about. But the other thing that really stands out to me is that Moses kind of argued with God. It was God's original desire that Moses should speak. And I think that there would have been blessings that came from that if Moses did speak. Moses kind of chickened out, and God provided somebody else. Now, I want you to think about your own life and your own ministry. What have you done for God? Or more importantly, what haven't you done for God, where you missed out on a blessing because that is what God was calling you directly to, but instead he had to raise up somebody else in your place? Not that there was anything wrong with Aaron. He did a fantastic job because God was there with him. That didn't catch God by surprise or anything like that. God knew that would happen, but that wasn't his intention. But God still uses human freedom to bring about his will. And so I just wonder, how many times have you passed up on an opportunity to serve Jesus Christ, the creator of heaven and earth? How many times have you given up that opportunity and missed out on the blessing that comes from that? I would highly recommend that you just kind of search your heart and see maybe if God is leading you to something. I know he is. He has a plan for you. Acts chapter 17 says that he's placed each person in their appointed boundaries in human history to search for him and possibly find him. God has placed you exactly where you need to be to find him, to give you the best chance possible. That's how much he loves you. That's how much he cares for you. That's how much he wants to bring you into a relationship with him. And so as we continue on in the book of Exodus, I hope you will enjoy the history. I hope you will enjoy trying to figure out maybe who these pharaohs are, because it's such a neat mystery, because we don't know for sure. but we will be getting into a little bit of that history as we continue on through here. But thank you for listening. Thank you for staying tuned in. I hope you'll like and subscribe. I hope you'll stick with me. I know this isn't the most entertaining thing, but it is the Word of God, easily accessible, and it is provided to you on this website. And so we thank you so much. My name is Kevin, and this has been the DiscipleSmith's podcast.